Murder Between Neighbors. Right Club Mysteries. Written by Michelle Corbier. Narrated by Artemis Arthur. Chapter 3. Because she neglected to slow down, Maisha took the turn into the cul-de-sac at 25 miles per hour. Tires screeched, and she reflectively slammed on the brakes. Straight ahead, her house loomed. A police patrol car was parked in front of her mailbox, next to an animal rescue unit and a half-dozen neighbors. Since the patrol car was blocking her driveway, Maisha parked next door on the right, in front of Tiffany's house. She jumped out of the car as the engine stopped. "What happened?" she asked, rushing over the crowd of spectators. No one answered. She noticed a couple neighbors, off to the side and huddled together, mumbling amongst themselves. She spotted two uniformed police officers. One had a gun pointed at Boomer. A man wearing a white jumpsuit, with the words "Animal Control" printed in orange on his jacket, held a long metal pole with a looped leash on the end. Circling around the crowd, Maisha dashed over to the growling, bristling black Labrador. "Boomer!" She threw her arms around his neck. "Stand back, lady," the police officer ordered, aiming his gun at Boomer. A second animal control officer sat in the rescue van, talking over a radio. "This is insane," she said, panting from her brief sprint. Slightly lowering his gun, the police officer approached. "We received a call about a rabid dog." "Boomer isn't rabid." Her gaze bore down upon the neighbors. "Who called?" "Doesn't matter," the officer said, addressing her, but his gaze fixed on the lab. One of the animal control officers joined the police officer, speaking to Maisha. "Is this your dog, lady?" Standing beside Boomer, Maisha directed him to sit. "Yes, he is. And he is fully vaccinated and licensed." While this discussion took place, the second police officer exited the patrol car. She watched him walk over to Jared's house. Following her gaze, Boomer remained at attention, but zeroed in on one person. Jared stood at the foot of his driveway. "Did he call?" Maisha asked, pointing her chin toward Jared. "Ma'am," the police officer drawled, "I told you it doesn't matter. Your dog got loose and bit—" "Bit who?" She gaped, bringing Boomer closer to her side. Her eyes strained, scrutinizing Jared's body for blood or torn clothing. Wearing sweats and sneakers, Jared lunged forward. "Me? That beast should be put down." She rushed toward Jared. Boomer hugged her side. One of the police officers stepped between them, causing her to stop a few feet away. Maisha's heartbeat hammered in her ears, along with a tiny warning voice repeating the same refrain. "You're going to jail." "Slow down. Think. If you get arrested, Boomer gets locked up too. Maybe worse." "If Boomer bit you, it's because you did something to him." "I was home minding my own business when he attacked me," Jared said, his neck veins taut against the collar of his hoodie. "What are you doing home this early anyway?" "That's none of— Enough!" the police officer shouted, raising his hands and separating them. An animal control officer approached Maisha. "We need to see the vaccination records and license for the lab. If his shots are up to date, you can pick him up at the kennel." She gasped. "Where? You're not taking him to a pound. He didn't do anything wrong." "He bit your neighbor," the animal control officer said. "Boomer didn't bite anyone. Show me." "We don't have to prove anything to you, ma'am," the officer said. "If you interfere, I'll arrest you." Her gaze automatically flew to the officer's weapon. His flat eyes didn't offer compromise. His gloved hand hovered over the gun, clinging to his hip. Swallowing hard, Maisha said, "Then you'll have to arrest me too. Boomer is on my property, and I don't see any injury to my neighbor." For a moment, the air was sucked out of the cul-de-sac as if everyone had drawn in a deep breath. Every eye rested on the police officer, who scrutinized Maisha, then Jared. Despite her strong words, inwardly she trembled. Should have called Denise. Once she'd received the call from Mrs. Lula, Maisha had zipped out of the office and straight home. Since she hadn't told Josiah or Denise what occurred, if she ended up in jail, they wouldn't know. Then what would happen to Boomer? He'd be taken to the kennel, and if he acted aggressively, they might put him down. Nauseated, she swallowed the bile refluxing in her throat. Straightening her spine, Maisha rested a hand on Boomer's head, returning the police officer's piercing gaze. The second police officer questioned Jared. "Sir, where were you bitten?" Jared stammered. "What? Are you kidding me?" He retreated from the officer. "I'm the victim and you're cross-examining me?" Assuming a wide stance with his arms draped over his chest, the police officer asked, "Sir, can you prove the dog either bit you or stepped on your property?" "What do I need? Video proof?" "It would help," the animal control officer said. "This dog isn't exhibiting behaviors of a rabid animal." Scanning the crowd, Jared said, "Tiffany!" Like a tornado, Tiffany zipped around and headed toward her house. "Wait!" Jared raised his voice. "Tiffany saw it, didn't you?" Faced away from the crowd, Tiffany lowered her head and slowly swung around. She avoided Maisha's and Jared's gaze, instead looking at the police officer. Ma'am," the police officer said, "if you did see anything, we need to know." Tiffany's two ponytails danced as her head shook. "I don't want to get involved." With Boomer at her heel, Maisha also approached Tiffany. "Please, if you witnessed anything." The police officer held up his hand and growled. "Step back, ma'am. You're lucky I'm not hauling your behind downtown. One more step and I will." Maisha bit back a rejoinder and directed Boomer to sit. She watched Tiffany, her gaze pleading her neighbor to tell the truth. Jared's clothing appeared intact, without signs of damage. At over 120 pounds, Boomer would have torn Jared apart if he had attacked. "What did you see?" The officer's intense countenance made Tiffany, who continued to avoid Maisha's gaze, tremble. Wrapping her arms around her bare arms, Tiffany hesitated. In shorts and a t-shirt, her toned legs flexed, prepared to flee. "Well..." For a second, Tiffany glanced past the police officer and at Jared. The latter's smug face slightly nodded. Maisha's shoulders tensed. They were communicating something anonymously. But what? And why should Tiffany be compelled to follow Jared's lead? She detected an uncomfortable undercurrent about their interaction. Her body shivered, not from the cold winter afternoon, but fear. Were they colluding against Boomer? Though curious, at the moment her concern focused solely on her dog's safety. Tiffany exhaled, keeping her alert eyes on Jared. "I saw the dog outside in the front yard." Maisha squeezed Boomer's collar. Realizing she might be hurting him, she relaxed her grip. Widening his stance with one eye on Maisha, the police officer asked, "Where? In whose yard?" "From my house it's hard to tell," Tiffany shivered. "It's freezing out here. I'm going back inside." While the officer followed Tiffany, the animal control officer asked Maisha, "May I examine your dog?" Initially hesitant, she consented after directing Boomer to sit. "Be nice, he's a friend." Boomer glanced up at her with droopy, doubtful eyes, before sitting obediently. First placing his pole inside the van, the animal control officer slowly approached the lab. It took a minute, but he allowed Boomer to lick his hand before petting the dog's head. Reclining on his side, Boomer let the animal control officer rub his belly. "This dog isn't aggressive," he said. "Probably scared. How did he get out?" "My neighbor's kids damaged my fence," Maisha said, glowering at Jared. "That's not true," Jared said, scrambling over to the animal control officer. Once Jared bolted forward, Boomer launched onto his feet, growling and barking. "See?" Jared screamed. "He's a menace! I'm surprised he hasn't killed anyone yet." The second police officer addressed Jared. "He doesn't appear to be a danger to anyone but you." He bent down and pet Boomer's head. Eyeing Jared, he asked, "Are you going to show me where he bit you or not?" "Screw this," Jared said, storming toward his house. "I'm calling my lawyer. Then I'm going to the doctor." Before he entered the house, he shouted over his shoulder, "This isn't over! I'm suing your ass and making sure that monster is put down." The police officer who was speaking with Tiffany eventually rejoined his partner. Maisha couldn't hear their conversation because the animal control officer was speaking to her. When one of the police officers started inspecting the fence, her shoulders tensed. As the animal control officer departed, one of the police officers approached her. "Better fix your fence. Mr. Lowry doesn't look like a dog lover." He petted Boomer once more. "I've seen this before. He can make your life a living hell if he wants to. Don't understand people who hate animals. Not natural." He departed and sat in the patrol car. After speaking with the police officer, Maisha remained in her driveway. "Ridiculous," Roger gruffed. "Boomer wouldn't bite Jared. He has better taste than that." Maisha tried to smile, but couldn't. She'd come too close to losing Boomer. Though still afraid, her heart rate had moderated. However, she could feel knots in her neck. While jotting down notes on a small tablet, the first police officer said, "Mrs. Stillwell isn't sure if the dog got into Mr. Lowry's property or not. She's coming in tomorrow to give an official statement." He glared into Maisha's face. "I suggest you fix that fence and apologize to your neighbor." The police officer eyeballed Boomer. "Otherwise, you'll be needing a new dog." After uttering those last words, the police officer stomped away. The hairs on the back of Boomer's neck raised. "Down, Boomer," Maisha said. "We don't bite police officers, even when they deserve it." For several minutes, after all the neighbors had returned to their homes, Maisha stood in her driveway, surveilling the cul-de-sac. She glanced right at the house closest to the main street. Where had Mrs. Lula gone? Eventually, she took Boomer inside and collapsed on the couch. She'd thank Mrs. Lula later. Boomer trotted over and laid his head on her lap. Maisha massaged his neck. "Don't worry, you're not going anywhere. Mommy would sooner see Jared dead than allow anyone to take her Boomer." Chapter 4. A chilly wind blew Maisha's thick, curly black hair around her face. She tried, unsuccessfully, to rope it behind her ears. Thick mittens covered her hands, hampering the process. She bounced from leg to leg, stimulating the circulation in her feet. "Maybe we should do this tomorrow," she said, standing behind AJ. His words were garbled because of the nails between his lips. "No, I'm good." "Well, I'm freezing." She shuddered, slid the glove off her left hand, and removed the nails from AJ's mouth. "That's dangerous, not to mention unhygienic. Do you want your fence fixed or not?" He took the nails from her and began hammering a long, pale plank vertically along a 3-foot gap in the fence. Burn scars covered 2 wooden slats framing the opening. She stared at the ground, mumbling. "We wouldn't be out here if Jared simply paid for the repairs. Jerk." With her shoe, Maisha prodded the stiff, brown grass. She checked her watch. Jared should be home from work. What would happen if she confronted him with AJ present? Firemen helped people. Having a 6-foot 10-inch boyfriend should come with advantages. And if Jared got nasty, she could tell AJ to punch him in the face. AJ's a human being, not a tool. Besides, she'd rather smack Jared's pointy nose herself. A pile of brown pellets caught her gaze. What's that? I don't know, AJ grumbled, positioning another piece of plywood above the first. Using her shoe, Maisha rolled the pellets around. On inspection, she discovered more pellets in the grass near the gap in the fence. She picked up a piece and brought it to her nose. You're not going to eat it, AJ winced. Of course not. I'm smelling it. AJ grimaced and hammered in another board. Snapping the pellet in half, Maisha sniffed it again. This is cat food. Why would someone sprinkle cat food around your fence? AJ asked, sending her a quick glance before hammering another plank. Maybe to lure a hungry dog out of the backyard. Maisha stared at the pellet, then glared next door at Jared's house. 30 minutes later, AJ stood, stretching his back and handing her the hammer. There, all fixed? Humph, she snorted and headed towards the garage. Let's get inside. I'm freezing my butt off. AJ wrapped an arm around her waist. It looks fine from here. She ignored his comment as he kissed her neck. In the garage, she hung the hammer on a pegboard with other tools and pushed the button to lower the garage door. On her heels, AJ entered the house. In the kitchen, Boomer and Zoe, AJ's brown lab, sat beside their food bowls. Maisha frowned at the dogs. We've been outside freezing to make a safe home for you two, and the first thing you do is beg for food. Zoe woofed, and Boomer seconded. Before she could head for the pantry, AJ poured nibbles into the bowls. There you go, he said, patting Zoe's head. You gonna let me pet you, buddy? AJ's hand hovered in the air over Boomer's head. The black lab's low stomach growl preceded AJ's retreating hand. No problem, he said. Maybe one day. After washing her hands, Maisha began removing food items from the refrigerator. Don't let it bother you. Boomer's still upset about yesterday. The kitchen stool squelched as AJ sat. Do you actually think your neighbor deliberately lured Boomer outside the fence? Why not? Maisha shut the refrigerator with her elbow. He's an ass, and there's no other explanation for why Boomer would leave the backyard. Maybe he was curious. Maisha prepared dinner. Boomer has lived here all his life. What made him suddenly decide to investigate the side yard? She poured soda into a cup and handed it to AJ. Besides, I can open the front door and Boomer won't leave the house without my permission. Well, he left the backyard for a reason. Food. With zeal, Maisha chopped lettuce. Green leaves flew around the cutting board. AJ stole a sliced cucumber from the board. What's with you and this neighbor? He asked, crunching the vegetable. Maisha glared at him. He called animal services on my dog. This wouldn't have happened if you fixed the fence. I offered to do it for you. Those planks will at least keep Boomer inside until you hire someone to repair it. She dropped the knife on the kitchen island, where it clattered. Are you blaming me? AJ's hand rose pleadingly. All I'm saying is if you fixed the fence, this wouldn't have happened. I didn't break the fence. My moronic neighbor's kids burned it. After a deep sigh, AJ circled around the island to stand beside her. Life is difficult enough without inviting trouble. Maisha jerked away from him. Seriously, you're blaming me for this. All I'm saying is fix the fence and get reimbursement from the neighbor later. Protecting Boomer is what matters. It's important to stand up for your principles. His baby kids broke my fence. He should fix it. I'm not paying for a new fence. Shaking his head, AJ returned to the stool. You're not listening. If you'd calm down. What? Both labs vaulted off the floor at her exclamation. I've waited 6 months to get my fence fixed, Maisha said as the knife wavered in her hand. I offered to fix it several times. Maisha gaped. Outrageous! She hacked at a bell pepper. You're saying this is my fault? AJ's jaw tensed. You're not. I listened to what you said. Give in and let my neighbor get away with not paying to fix the fence. That's not what I said. So, What would you have done? Fix the fence and send him a bill. She chuckled. Sure, because you're rational and I'm emotional. He glanced at the butcher's knife in her hand, pointed at his chest. Right now? Yes. Maisha stuck the knife into the carving board. It stood up on end. She crossed her arms over her heaving chest and glared. AJ climbed off the stool. Perhaps I should leave. She didn't move or speak. Her eyes followed AJ around the house as he gathered his coat and wallet. He attached Zoe's leash and headed for the front door. Over his shoulder, he said, I'll call you later. Under her breath, Maisha mumbled, Yeah, you do that, while following him to the front door. As he exited, Mrs. Lula approached. Hello, Mrs. Lula. Hello, Mrs. Lula, AJ said, not stopping to hear her reply. Mrs. Lula watched him enter his truck and drive off. She turned around with wrinkled brows. Did I interrupt something? No, Maisha said, glaring at AJ's departing truck. Perfect timing. Half a minute passed with neither speaking. Once the truck exited the cul-de-sac, Maisha focused on her neighbor. Something wrong? Oh, Mrs. Lula said, her lips trembling. I need to ask a huge favor. Anything. What can I do for you? Maisha stepped inside the house and bumped into Boomer. Sorry, guy. She turned around. Want to come in? I can't. Frowning, Mrs. Lula glanced past Maisha and into the foyer. It's a lot to ask, but I need to leave tomorrow. Maisha's left brow raised. I hope it's nothing terrible. Did you need a ride? No, I want you to watch my house, just for a few days. Sure, Maisha said, observing Mrs. Lula's wrinkled brow. But what's wrong? She had never seen the septuagenarian distressed. What could discombobulate Mrs. Lula? It's nothing. Fishing for a key from inside her bra, Mrs. Lula handed it to Maisha. Would you mind? You don't have to go inside, unless I call, or you see something suspicious going on. In fact, I'd prefer you not go inside, unless absolutely necessary. Seconds elapsed as Maisha studied her neighbor. Mrs. Lula generally had a mellow temperament, not prone to rash, impulsive decisions. And now she had proposed to leave, suddenly, and had asked Maisha to watch the house but not go inside. Didn't she understand how tempting it would be? If I don't have to go inside, I won't, Maisha promised. Please come in. Let's talk. Mrs. Lula waved her off and departed. There's a lot to do. I don't have time. Wait. Maisha proceeded after her, but realized she didn't have any shoes on. By the time she slipped into sneakers, Mrs. Lula had made it to her porch. Wow, she can move. Minutes passed as Maisha gawked at Mrs. Lula's front door. Before returning inside, she glanced at Jared's house. After muttering an expletive, she shut the front door.